Welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about the secret to getting internal funding for professional development. Although this advice is going to hold for whatever kind of internal funding you might want to get, right? If you want to request a graduate assistant, if you want to request space or equipment, this method is the way that works. And it has a piece to it that you're going to find maybe a little bit unusual, but that's why we are digging into it today. Okay, before we get started, I want to announce that we have slightly changed the dates for our next round of Navigate Your Writing Roadmap. Navigate is our program for professors to write and publish more and get their pipelines flowing. It is created for professors who have that backlog of papers and just need to figure out how to organize themselves and get their writing flowing so that can get their big ideas out in the world. If you're interested, you can find in the show notes or the description of this video a link to all the information, including the dates for our next session and the link to get on the wait list. When you click the wait list button, you're gonna see that you just have to find the pink button and that's gonna take you to the wait list. If you're on the wait list, you get first crack at enrollment, so you're definitely gonna wanna do that. And just before we jump in to the secret to getting internal funds for professional development, I want to let you know that that next cohort of Navigate will run from August 14th until November 3rd. We pulled it up slightly from what we were thinking before. We were thinking we were going to start September, but we're actually going to start mid-August. And the deadline to enroll is August 3rd. So if you're thinking about asking for funding for Navigate using the method I'm going to talk about today, then you better get on it because the program enrollment period closes August 3rd. So you're going to want to get on that wait list so that you're the first to know when we open the doors for applications. Okay, let's get started. So this is the secret, like the secret. I'm going to give you 3 things to think about, but number 1 is the secret to getting internal funding. And that's this. It's not about you. Okay, you really need to understand this deeply in order to be successful in any kind of funding endeavor, especially about internal funding. Your request should not be about you. It should be about the person or the entity to which you are asking for funding. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean is that how great you are at your job, how deserving you are compared to other colleagues, how amazing the experience of this professional development program is going to be for you, or whatever you're requesting, right? How great it's going to change your career. None of that is as important as the interests of the person to whom you are soliciting the funding. So, for example, if you're asking your university to fund you, then the reason that they should fund you should be because it aligns with their institutional goals. So the argument that you need to make has to be about what they want, not about what you want, not about how it's going to help you. The argument should be all about how it's going to affect them and help them. All right, so let's dig into that a little bit more. So for example, let's say that you want to request funding from your dean for something, right? For professional development, which is the main kind of discussion point of this video. But for any of those other things I mentioned at the top, a student, space, equipment, you have to be able to argue or show the dean how fulfilling your request will help him or her or them, right? It has to be beneficial for the dean. So you've got to think, like, what are the priorities of the dean? What are the things, and you can only you can see this in 2 ways, right? Because usually, like, the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences or whatever might have released a statement. Maybe the dean has been working on the strategic plan. And so the latest version of the strategic plan has a lot of things that are important to that person. But you also need to look at what the dean talks about when you go to faculty meetings. When what does this person say to the university about what's important? What do they say to your department chair about what is important? So, and then you have to hook into those things. So when you make a request, the reasons for your request are not that it would help me, that it would help my students, whatever. The reasons are whatever the reasons the dean wants to see. Okay, so if the dean is really currently worried about recruitment numbers for undergrad students going down, how can your request for professional development funding help recruitment numbers for undergraduate students? Now, it might be a stretch, right? You're gonna have to really think. It might take some cleverness. It might take some, real argumentative twists and turns, but that is what you have to do. Whenever you are requesting funding, the most important argument for your funding, it has nothing to do with your personal desires. It has everything to do with the desires of the person or the position to whom or to which you are requesting. So one way to do this is to go ahead and get out your university's strategic plan. Now, I'm not saying that universities are always what they say in their strategic plan is actually what they want to do. That's not always true. But let's assume, right, one direction that you can take is to get your university's strategic plan. This is something, if you are not already super familiar with it, you need to be familiar with it for any kind of funding requests, internal and external. And you need to look for the places in the strategic plan where you getting the professional development funding is advancing the goals of the strategic plan. So for example, if the strategic plan says something about retention of faculty, getting professional development is a great way to help the dean retain faculty or help the provost retain faculty. So them funding your professional development is helping them enact that part of the strategic plan. Again, you could connect it to students. You could connect it to whatever your university is saying about being a world-class research institution or whatever. You have to, what I would do as an exercise is I would actually sit down with the strategic plan. Usually it's divided into some kind of outliney form, 10 main things and a couple things under each one, or 5 main areas and 3 areas under each one. I would write down all of those main points in the strategic plan. And I would just play with arguments for why you getting supported for professional development is advancing that part of the strategic plan. Not all of it will work, right? Not every bit, you're not gonna be able to make an argument for every part of the strategic plan, but it's a great place to start. So the secret to getting internal funds for professional development is the understanding that the argument you make shouldn't be about you. It should actually be about the interests of the entity or the person to which you are requesting funds. Now, another thing I want to say, the strategic plan is one way to go. Also though, really think about the person to, who you're making that request to. So, what do they always talk about? What's always coming up in meetings with this person? Maybe do a little asking around. If you're asking the dean, see if you can get some insider information from your department chair, from even, I don't know, the support staff, the associate dean, anybody who, network and figure out what is the stuff that keeps the dean up at night, and how is you getting professional development funding, how is it addressing some of those needs? All right, so that's the big secret. If you're done listening, that's fine, but I got more for you. Okay, so I have 2 more kind of things to think about as you are requesting internal funds for professional development. Okay, so the second thing is ask up. And what this means is that you basically don't just ask your department chair. You don't just ask the dean. If you get a no, you ask up. So your department chair says, wow, it sounds like a really great opportunity, but we just don't have the funds for that. Then you say, great, or thank you for listening. Would you write me a letter of support as I go ask the dean for those funds? The same with the dean, especially because a lot of times the easiest reason for people to say no is there's no money for that. And this will get into my some other mindset things along that I want to talk about in this episode. But really, there's always money for stuff. And so what you need to do is make a good enough argument so that they use the money on you, right? So so many times we have told clients who have said, I don't want to ask. We've said, just ask, you don't know. And somebody has decided to I'll support that, right? Again, though, the reason that people support your request for funding is because there's something in it for them. So you got to figure out what that is and, couch your request around that or make your request related to that thing. But anyway, ask up. So you get a no. If the no is, we don't have money for that, then you ask for a letter of support as you go to the dean. The same thing at the dean level. You go up to the provost, or you go to a different dean, right? Maybe a dean of research or a dean of academic affairs or some other dean that's up there. And then onward up to the provost or the president or however your university is structured. And the reason for this is because that people in administrative positions, they do have access. There is discretionary funding. They always have access to some kind of funding. You just have to make them see why they should use it for you, right? Okay, so ask up. And when you're asking up, make sure that you ask for a letter of support from the person who said no. If they don't give it to you, you ask up anyway. But it'll be even better if you have support from that, your department chair, up to the dean, up to the provost or whatever. All right, the third thing I want to talk about here before we get on to three big mindset issues is that sometimes people are worried about they'll be like, oh, well, they're not going to give me all of that money, right? They're not going to give me the whole amount. Then negotiate for partial funding. If you get a no, then if you get no, I can't cover the $4,500 of Navigate, then ask, okay, could you cover $3,500, right? Could you cover half? Something, and then you can continue to ask on or ask up to see if you could get the rest of the funding. But don't think that because someone says no, that they won't maybe be able to swing a smaller amount. But if you don't ask, they might not think of it, right? And again, many times I've been on the phone with potential clients and I've said well, maybe you could get partial funding. And people said, I never thought to ask for partial funding. So I'm telling you, asking for partial funding is also a great way to go. And we actually love that. As someone who runs professional development programs, I love to see a person who is I want to do this thing and I am going to get myself funded for it. And if I have to put some money in, then I've got to put some money in. But I am doing it. I'm figuring out a way. And negotiating for partial funding is a great way to really say hey, this, don't give up, right? Don't give up in your request. No, you want to do this thing. They say no. You say, well, how about this amount? How about this amount? Negotiate. It's really, really important. All right. Now, as I'm telling you all these things, it's so easy. It's not easy. I know. There's a lot of mindset stuff in the way between you and the funding. So I want to talk about some main kind of thoughts that I see our clients bring to this asking for professional development funding. Or again, you can apply this to any kind of internal funding. So these are mindset things that might get in your way as you're trying to ask. So the first one that I hear a lot is I already have startup funds, for example, or they already funded me to go to my yearly conference, so I can't ask for more funding. So I just want to like flip that on its head a little bit and say, if they have funded you, if they have already determined that you are worthy of funding, then that's good. And you should ask for more funding. That is not a reason to stop asking. That's actually a reason to keep asking, because they have found you valuable and they have found your work valuable. And so by their actions, they have already said, oh, this person is worth an investment. So go for it. Like, go for the investment. Like, that you continue to make yourself more and more valuable to them and ask them to support you as they do it. So they already see you as an investment. If they funded you before, it doesn't take you out of the running for further investment. All right, the second mindset thing. So this is something I was working on with a current one-on-one client, and she realized she had this realization. She had the realization that she was applying what she has learned about and how she deals with her personal finances to how she deals with pots of money that she has from funding. So whether that's from internal funding or grant funding or donor funding, if you think of all of that funding the same way that you think about your kind of personal bank account, then you're not going to be able to leverage those funds in the way that's going to give you the best payoff. So here's what I mean. Like, if you are thinking like, oh, I am a person who is rather frugal personally. I like to save money. I like to see that I have money in my savings account. I like to invest money. I like to see money in my investment accounts. So you take that same approach to your startup funds, your grant funds, maybe pots of donor funding that you might have, your indirect cost kickbacks, like any kind of pots of funding that you might have access to. If you're taking that same kind of personal finance approach to them, and so you're like, oh, I'm gonna save this money, I'm gonna hold on to it as much as I can. First of all, if you have grant funding, you cannot do that. You must spend your grant funding, and you must spend it at a certain clip. They actually don't want you to like hold on to it and try to milk it. They can take it away from you if there's leftover at the end of the grant period. They don't have to do a no cost extension. So you want to take the attitude of spending that money is how I'm going to get the best result. And the same for any pots of money that you're sitting on. So some people kind of hold on to their startup funds because someday I might need it for this thing or whatever. You need to spend money in order to get leveraged results. And the best way that you can leverage results for yourself is to get professional development. Like, you being a better professional is only going to mean more funding for you later, like more grants, more written pieces out in the world, right? More publications, a better lab, more students. Like, there is no reason to sit on and hold and miserly, hold on to any pots of money that you have. Investing them in yourself is the absolute best investment that you can make, and that is professional development. So if you've been thinking like, oh, I have this money, or I might have access to this money, I need to ask if I can use it for this, ask. You need to spend that money. That you're going to get so much like better results in your career more quickly if you don't sit on pots of money like startup funds, but rather you invest them in yourself. It's a way better investment than like a computer. Like, it's like a way better investment than anything else, because if you make your work, your ability to get your job done more enjoyable and better and more efficient, then you are going to be so much happier. You're going to last in the job longer. You're going to be a better professor for students. You're going to be able to get more funding. Like, it's all like that kind of help is super leveraged help. So some people like take that attitude of like, I'm going to hold on to this money, or I got this pot of money. Don't hold on to it. And also another thing, this is the third mindset thing. Some people think, well, I have this money in startup funds, and so I have to choose between spending it on professional development and going to my conference and presenting. No, actually what you should do is ask for more money. Okay? So just because you still have a balance in your startup funds doesn't mean you can't continue to ask for more internal funding. Like people have all kinds of rules in their head about what you can or cannot do. Like, no, aggressively asking for funding, or I don't mean like being aggressive, but I mean like continuing to ask for funding, continuing to find opportunities for investment in yourself makes you a better employee. So that should be something like maybe your dean or your department chair or somebody in the uppers of your university is going to look at that like, why does she keep asking, why does she think we have these endless pots of money for her? But they could as easily be thinking, wow, she's really dedicated. Wow, she really wants to get better and better. And look what she's been able to accomplish because she's had the kind of support that you really need. So don't make up rules for yourself about asking for internal funding. There aren't any rules. There is the secret though, right? So I'm just going to go back and repeat that. The biggest secret to asking and getting internal funding for professional development or for any other reason is that the argument should not be about you and your worthiness. The argument needs to be about what the person you're asking to prioritizes what they want. So if it's the institution, what does the institution want? What are the priorities of the institution? It's not about you, it's about them. Okay? So I hope that this helps you as you are thinking about requests for internal funding. And we encourage you to right now start requesting internal funding for your participation in the next cohort of Navigate. I put all the information in the description so that you can find out when the next dates are, how much it costs, and when the next deadline to enroll is. But regardless, if you want to do it, start asking now so that you have lots of time to move those funds in your favor. All right, have a great day. Bye.